Here today with Dr. Edwin Yamauchi, and he's written a number of books on archaeology in the Bible, and I'm just wondering if you can say a few words about archaeology in the Bible. There seems to be quite a bit of debate on does archaeology prove the Bible or disprove the Bible, and you have a few words to say about that.
Well, I've written a book called The Stones in the Scriptures, in which I survey the many positive aspects in which archaeology has confirmed or illuminated the Bible. However, there are, of course, counter-trends. Since I published that book in the 1970s, critical scholars such as Thomas Thompson and John Van Cedars, for example, in the 1970s, after I published that book, questioned the historicity of the patriarchal narrative, especially of Abraham. And there were questions of anachronism, the reference to camels in the records in Genesis, reference to Ur of the Chaldees, and reference to Amorites and so forth. And many of those so-called alleged anachronisms can be now countered by new evidence and also by new understanding. Reference to Ur of the Chaldees is probably a later gloss, because it is true that the Chaldeans were not present at the time of Abraham. Most scholars would date Abraham to about the early 2nd millennium BC. We now have evidence for camels, like that early as well, and the reference to Amorites is no longer considered anachronistic since the discovery of some texts in the Maori archives. This recently published an article called Abraham and Archaeology in a Fester for my friend Marvin Wilson that summarizes some of this new information. Also in that book, The Stones in the Scriptures, I pointed out that part of the problem with trying to correlate archaeological evidence with the biblical text is that these are two different kinds and sources of evidence. One is textual and traditional, and the other is artifactual, either material or in the way of inscriptions. And in the latter two categories, only a fragment of those materials which were extant, certainly only a fragment of the inscriptions that were originally extant survive or have been discovered. So from time to time we get new discoveries, such as the House of David inscription found by Avraham Biran in the northern Israelite town of Dan. So there are scholars called the minimalists, especially in Copenhagen, Denmark, and the University of Sheffield in England, who have taken such a radical stance about the date of the Old Testament texts, including the Pentateuch, that they deny that any of this material is of any value, because they assume such a very late date for these texts, dating back to only the Persian or Hellenistic period. But here again, archaeology has tended to disprove that kind of radical skepticism. There was a remarkable find made in Jerusalem at a site called Ketef Hinnom, the shoulder of Hinnom, by Gabriel Barca, an Israeli archaeologist, 2 silver amulets that are dated to the 7th century BC that contain the famous priestly benediction from Numbers. And these are texts that are now 400 to 500 years older than the Dead Sea Scrolls text. Now, while they don't show that the Pentateuch was, as a whole, that early, they certainly prove that the Pentateuch was much earlier than the late date of the Persian Hellenistic period that these radical scholars suggest. Many other discoveries can be made, can be cited, that sometimes show specific corroboration of biblical texts, and also in a more general and more indirect way show that the biblical texts are indeed credible, and this is an indirect way. Suggestion, question?
Okay, that's very interesting. I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you very much.